All right. Well, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. I am Brenton Ruger with my co-host Adam McConnell and Jonathan Richardson here to share another episode of Everyday Men, Profound Conversations, where we bring to you hopefully another perspective and an opportunity to see the world through a different lens. So I'm really excited about our show this morning. We have our guest, Marc DiFrancia, is here with us this morning. And before I get into introducing Marc, I do want to say that we are sponsored by the Greater Carolinas Area Mankind Project, which is here locally in the South Carolina, North Carolina, parts of Virginia, and parts of Tennessee, this central area. And we are under the umbrella of the Mankind Project, which is an international organization which creates a world where men act on their individual and collective responsibility for the future of humanity by initiating and supporting men on a path of emotional maturity, spiritual awareness, and deepening community. And we're really grateful you've taken the time out of your morning, afternoon, or evening to join us, and looking forward to a great show with you. So without any further ado, today our conversation is going to probably take a few different directions, but where we're starting at, the starting point is this is going to be a conversation really about leadership and how identity is the enemy of leadership. So leadership and how identity is the enemy of leadership. And we'll discuss some other things within that. But I'd like to introduce our guest, Marc DiFrancia. Marc, you take it away and share a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your story and anything that you'd like to share.
Hi, I'm Marc DiFrancia, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Creative Self-Mastery. We work in the corporate and private sector, teaching team building and leadership. And I have a group that I work with, several coaches. We're out in the world coaching, creating coaches, and creating leaders wherever we can. And I'm honored to be here today. If you want any information about me, just can go to creativeselfmastery.com. It's really not important. It's not as important as the conversation today. So I'd rather just get right into it. If you're interested, you'll find me at creativeselfmastery.com. And pretty much you'll know who I am by the end of this conversation, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about your story, because to me, Marc, your story is just fascinating. Living in England and what you experienced a little bit over there, and what brought you into the coaching realm, into the creative self-mastery realm, and anything pertinent about that story. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that. It just fascinates me.
All right. Yeah, I mean, look, everybody loves a good backstory, and I've got a good backstory. First 40 years of my life spent in all sorts of psychological dysfunction, from addictions to opioids, to nicotine, to alcohol, codependent abusive relationships, physically abusive, psychologically abusive, health problems, being crippled with back pain, hence the addiction issues, to the point of not being able to walk the length of a room without falling down, to needing a wheelchair if I was out in public. Situations that were difficult by anybody's. One of these situations would be difficult by anybody's estimation to overcome, but I managed to overcome all of those things, poverty included. And that's really why I went into service to the planet, to mankind. My thing was, I figured out that there was another way of thinking, another perspective that worked better for me than the victimization that I was embracing. And I created a new way of thinking for myself. And now I like to pass that way of thinking on for other people. You take what works for you, you throw the rest away. Yeah. Hopefully there'll be something in here, because, the doctors said I would never be able to walk. I used to, when I could walk, I walked with a very pronounced limp. I needed, crutches or cane. They said I'd never walk, normally again. I'm 55 years old. I ride horses. I do, there's nothing I don't do. If there's something I want to do, I do it. My my back doesn't limit me. Nothing about my physicality limits me. Matter of fact, I've beaten that chronic back pain. And just to do that alone is an accomplishment, but to beat the addictions that went along with it, all of those things, it's not boasting, it's just the reality. I'm thrilled to be able to say that. At one point in my life, I was ready to commit suicide. And within 3 months, I was living a completely different life. I'd moved to London, no money in my pocket, by the way, but moved to London, started my recovery, met the right doctors or the right clinicians at the right time. Everything started to fall into place the minute I set my mind to it. And that is what I teach people to do now, to set their minds to what they want to experience in life, and to not let their negative thinking get in the way of that.
I love that. I love it. I think that's a great start to jumping in. And I think we should just jump in feet first. Adam, Jonathan, anything you guys want to start with? As far as questions go, or?
Yeah, sure. I'll go.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mark, for showing up this morning. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You talked a lot about sort of what you've overcome in terms of addiction, abusive relationships, basically living out of your dysfunction. And I'm also aware that at one point you had studied with a lot of really giants in the field of sort of personal development. I think you mentioned Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra and Anthony Robbins, and a lot of people who are in that self-help, personal development industry. It sounds like you're doing that prior to your sort of new understanding or sort of evolution of your thinking. And I guess what was it? When did it stop just being words from famous people and started being something you could feel and live?
It's an awesome question, because the reality is that, yeah, I had my spiritual awakening, when I was in my 20s. And then I proceeded to go completely unconscious for about 15 years or longer. It was like I had this glimpse of something amazing, and then ego just went, absolutely not. That is not happening. We're not giving you that option. And I went completely unconscious. But during that time that I was unconscious, I was still seeking. I read all the books. I read the Louise Hayes. I went and worked with Marianne Williamson and the like. I was grasping at straws. I wanted that paradigm shift, and I wasn't getting it. I studied Puna spirituality for 20 years. Studied Toltec for just as long. Toltec wisdom. Pretty much anywhere I could get information, I went to get information. But it's an astute observation that none of that did anything to prevent me from hitting rock bottom. Because the reality is, none of it addressed what needed to be addressed. The problem wasn't that my soul was tarnished by life experiences. I don't believe your soul gets tarnished by life experiences. I believe your ego gets tarnished by life experiences, but not your soul. But nobody was talking about the idea that it was just the way I was thinking that was getting me in trouble. Sure, it was out there, don't get me wrong, but nobody had been able to knit it into a system that worked for me. And at the time that this all shifted for me, I had pretty much, you hear this all the time, right? I hit rock bottom. I had a surgery on my back that had gone wrong, and that was the one where they said, now this doesn't get any better from here. We've screwed it up, and it doesn't get any better from here. I had just lost my partner, who died unexpectedly. We had only been together a year, but he died really unexpectedly, and he was the first healthy relationship I'd ever gotten into. And that was a real shock. And I was severely addicted, and I was, in the throes of poverty. But more than anything, I was totally embracing my addiction. I mean, my victimization, which was my addiction, really. And at some point, I just decided that enough was enough. I had driven away all of my friends and family. Nobody was checking. There were two people in my life that were still checking in on me at that point. Um, and and it didn't seem, I wasn't enjoying my life. Didn't look like I was ever going to enjoy my life. So I said, I'm done checking out. I had my whole suicide plan worked out. I can show you. This is my prescription bottle, my last prescription bottle. This is OxyContin. Yeah, much of that. A fistful of that, a little bit of vodka to make sure that, I could wash it all down, and it moved in a little bit faster. Some Valium, because they gave me Valium too, so why not throw it in the mix? The first part was to smash my cell phone though, so that I couldn't back out, because I always heard about people who back out of their suicide plans. And I was like, I'm not going to be one of those people. If I'm doing it, I'm doing it. So the first thing I was going to do is smash my cell phone. I had everything lined up. And I got ready to smash the cell phone. It was the first time in my life I had ever heard a voice. I heard a voice very loud, very clear, that said, don't do it. It will get better. I promise it will get better. And I heard it. It's textbook, right? It was loud. It was like it was in the room. Yeah, that's all true. I know it sounds trite. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's exactly what happened. I heard a voice that sounded like it was in the room that said, don't do it, it will get better. But I turned around and said to the voice, oh, really? Okay, go on. I challenged the voice. I said, I'll stick around for a few more months. I'm not in a hurry. I've made it this long. But if it's going to get better, I want to know, is it going to get better marginally, or is it going to get better? I wanted my health back. I wanted my freedom back. I wanted my mobility back. I wanted to be enjoying my life. And I also said, if love is coming again, I just lost a great human being. If love is coming again, it has to be better than that. And that was pretty amazing. That was on December 21st, which was, December 22nd, which was 2 months after my partner died. 2-month anniversary, I lost his ring. It was what set me over the edge. And that's when I decided I was going to kill myself. 1 month later, on January 22nd, after, getting very clear on what I wanted, writing it all down, putting it all out there, challenging the universe, that voice, to deliver on it. 1 month later, I met the person who's now my husband and has been for the last 10 years. We met, and that was kind of the beginning. In that month, things had started to get better, like marginally better. But within 3 or 4 months, things were getting noticeably better. And within a few months of that, I was living in London. The story of how that happened is, again, if I tell it, you won't believe it anyway. But that story, I needed money. Money basically just fell out of the sky. And I went and I lived in London, and that's where I started basically what I would say the transformation. And part of that was meeting a group of people in London that worked in personal development. And the approach that they had taken to personal development was very much like the approach that I had pieced together and been using at this point now for several months. And so I took to them right away. I said, these people and I have very similar philosophies. And over the years, I worked with them along with a bunch of other, names that you've mentioned over those months as well. I still continued to work with other people. But by this point, I had developed what I thought worked for me, and was now contrasting to what I was seeing in the outside world. And instead of looking to bring more in, I was looking to see where the commonalities were and where I could beef up what I was understanding, but not necessarily to bring more in, because I feel like it's like where I'm at is a fairly complete perspective. Now, not to say that there's not room for more, there always is. That I'm constantly trying to learn, but I'm not looking to, I wasn't looking to, I wasn't seeking anymore.
Mhm.
When I started bringing these people back in, it was from the perspective of being an equal, not somebody who was seeking their approval or trying to necessarily, gain their wisdom. I felt I had already benefited from their wisdom. Now I was trying to come at it from a different perspective.
Mm.
Good, good.
Excellent.
Again, I just want to say, I think it's pretty powerful piece for you to still have that bottle of oxycodone. That to me, that's very powerful piece as a reminder for, of where you were and what you don't want to return to. That's how I see it. Yeah, I'm coming off of, I'm at about 4 months of sobriety. Uh, December 20th was the last time I had a drink last year. So, is there any particular, I know you mentioned a handful of things that you've been working with and working through to overcome your addiction, your addictive past. Is there any particular thing that you favor, any particular method,
Uh,
modality, or person?
yeah, but it's gonna fuck with your paradigm, man. Sorry. Like, because if you're in recovery, I don't want to be putting ideas into your head.
Ah,
If you've got a system that's working for you, that's fine. But what I will say is that I was forced into various programs by the courts because I was an asshole and got into trouble with the law a lot for drunk driving and things like that. Um, and um, and I was put through a lot of programs. Alcoholics Anonymous is one of them for sure. But I was put through 7 or 8 different programs actually, court appointed. And I don't agree with the AA perspective. I know that it works for a lot of people, but for me, abstinence is not management. I can abstain from something, and that's nothing more than willpower. And I'm asked to give my willpower to a higher source. I don't believe that I'm separate from higher source. I am source. I'm source having a human experience. And if I choose to not have the human experience of addiction, I'm granted that because I'm source. I create everything in my life. Everything I experience is my decision. So the idea of giving my power away, I believe in God, but I don't believe God is separate from me. So I don't feel like I have to give my power away to an external source because to me it's internal. But way beyond the dogma of it is the idea that I don't believe that abstinence is the same thing as management. Willpower, employing willpower is not the same thing as not being addicted. The only way that you take your power back from the drug, as far as I'm concerned, is to be able to be around it without being afraid it's going to take control of you. That's power. That is control. That is managing one's addiction. I can go back to that anytime I choose. I don't choose. And it doesn't have the power over me. I have the power over it. It can't jump into my system. Only I can choose to bring it into my system, and only I can choose whether it takes over. And any thoughts about, chemical addiction and everything else, sorry, but all of that can be beaten. I'll tell you, it was harder to beat nicotine than it was to beat opioids. So, but if you can break the chemical addiction of nicotine, you can break the chemical addiction of anything. And the psychological addiction, that is just a matter of choice. That's just my perspective.
That's powerful. And I think that's a great segue into identity and part of what we want to talk. I know leadership is thrown around a lot these days. And so as far as this conversation is concerned, and you speaking of transformation, the way I perceive that is moving from one way of being to another, I think that has a lot to do with identity. And I'd like to inquire your perspective, Marc, about how identity is formed, and begin the conversation of leadership and how that shows up in the world individually as individuals, and how identity can be the enemy of leadership. But could you share a little bit about your perspective on how identity is formed?
Sure. Look, a lot of what you're going to hear from me is dogmatic, and it's not meant to be. I actually just I stripped God completely out of my conversations for a long time. But if the word challenges you, good. That's what I want. So I put God back in because it challenges people. And that's what I want. I want to challenge perspective here. As far as I'm concerned, we're all God. There is no such thing as separation. That is an illusion. You are not you and I am not me. That's an illusion. An illusion called identity. An illusion born from the desire for God's desire to experience things outside of itself. Right? God can create anything and chooses to have all sorts of realms and realities. In this particular one, we believe that we are separate from our true nature, from our godliness. And the way that we achieve that separation is through a wound. The wound is something you cannot avoid. No parent in there, can do anything to prevent a child from being wounded. It's very simple. The child's brain only absorbs things a certain way. It only has a child's perspective to work with. Up until age 5 or so, children are making agreements with themselves about the way the world is, with their little wee brains that don't understand the world the way it is and don't have the context to be able to understand the world the way it really is. So they're making misconceptions about the world and they're internalizing them. I am not lovable. That person cannot be trusted. They're dangerous to me. Don't talk to strangers. Okay, mommy, I won't. What is it? What agreement are you making there? That anybody that you don't know is dangerous. Want to talk about increasing separation? How do we increase separation? We identify with our fears, with our wounds, trust, competency, lovability, power, control. We make agreements with ourselves. Don Miguel Ruiz calls them agreements. He says, that when in the process of domesticating, educated by our parents, that we make these agreements. I also call them beliefs because, we hear about core beliefs a lot. These core beliefs, these agreements, they're made by the child's mind. The child mind doesn't know how to interpret the real world. And it creates a sense of separation from God and from each other, right? Every sentence that starts with I has no godliness in it. Even if you say, I am God, there's nothing godly in that because I doesn't exist in God. You can't occupy both spaces. It's a paradox. We do occupy both spaces. We are God and we are human, but you can't occupy both realms at the same time. You can't be in your godliness and be angry at somebody. You can't be in your godliness and not trust somebody. If you don't trust somebody, you're in your wound, you're in your identity. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, we get these wounds from up till about age 5, and then from age 5 for the rest of our lives, we prove all of these assumptions that we've made, all of these agreements, all of these beliefs. We look for proof that people don't love us. And when something bad happens or somebody says something nasty to us, we go, oh, there's proof that person doesn't love me. We're constantly reaffirming that wound, constantly reaffirming our separation from each other and from God, and constantly working from our dysfunction because it's dysfunctional. There is another side to your personality. There's another side to your identity that's far more functional. but you're not there most of the time. Most of the time, your inner dialogue is criticizing. Most of the time, your inner dialogue is associating with your wound. Most of the time, your inner dialogue is saying, yes, you're right, those people don't love you, or yes, you're right, that situation is dangerous.
And basically is orienting oneself to a place of safety in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Ego is designed to keep you safe. And what do? We tell ourselves we're not in every situation in order to be able to be prepared. Worst scenario thinking, right? We always have to be prepared for the worst.
Like if this thing outside of me would change, then I'll be okay. If this would change out here, then I'll be okay. If I can manipulate this, I'll be okay. And control this, I'll be okay. It's part of the identity.
Powerlessness, control, we externalize that. We believe that we have to control the world around us in order to be safe. We believe in external sources, giving our power away to external sources, to God. God as an external force. God to me is not an external source. God's an internal source, but we treat God like it's an external source. We give our power away to authority figures. We give our power away to the government. We give our power away to each other. That's why I teach leadership, because anybody can be a leader in any situation. You're a leader right now if you choose to be. If you choose to have the highest vibration in the group, the strongest vibration, and look, I'll let you in on a little secret. It doesn't matter whether it's the highest vibration or not. The strongest vibration wins. I say it all the time. The person who has the biggest heart on for it, they're the one who wins. They get what they want. Look at Donald Trump. Everyone said he couldn't become president. Everyone said he couldn't become president. And yet he became president. Is he an example of a highly functional human being? Not in my estimation. In 50% of this country's estimation, he's a highly functional human being. The other 50%, not so much. I'm in the camp that's not so much. But I can never take away from the man that he had the power to get to where he wanted to go, because that's what he was working to prove. Right? But what does he prove over and over again? Really? That he's not powerful. I'm going to get that wall built. Didn't get the wall built. Every time somebody uses the words "it's not fair" or "it's not my fault," they're talking from their powerlessness. If you listen to him, he said stuff like that all the time. So extremely powerful, a powerful human being, but also extremely dysfunctional human being. Right. So anybody can be a leader. They just have to have the strongest vibration in order to be the leader. Now, the strongest vibration doesn't necessarily assure that you have the highest vibration, the most pure vibration, the vibration closest to godliness. And so we lead either from that low vibration of ego, or we work to remember, to dispel that illusion of separation and remember our true nature, and we hold a higher vibration. And if we hold a strong high vibration, people come up to it. If somebody down here in a lower vibration is really strong, you'll come down to it. How many times have you walked into a situation perfectly happy and then ended up in an argument because somebody else was already ticked off when you walked into the room? They're going to come down to the strongest.
Yesterday.
They're going to come down to the strongest vibration or up to the strongest vibration. It doesn't matter. Wherever that vibration is, the strongest vibration wins. And it doesn't have to be the healthiest. So when I teach, that's why I teach leadership, because I want people to be leading from functional leadership, not from their wound, not from their identity.
Yeah. And so it's important to be able to discern where that's playing out in my life or as an individual, how that shows up, and kind of get familiar with what some of my core beliefs, as you said, are. Is that could be beneficial to a person in wanting to.
Okay, well, now we're going to open this can of worms, aren't we? Because from there we go into shadow work, and I know, Brent, I know you personally. I have conflicting views on shadow work. Look, I am all for understanding what part of your wound is playing out and neutralizing it. But I do not believe that most people, and I'm going to use the blanket term of shadow work, not the actual person who developed shadow work, because it's got a, in the spiritual context, it's got a huge connotation. And so I'm going to use the broad sense of shadow work and say that most of it is designed to keep you focusing on exactly what isn't working in your life. Most of it is designed to keep you focusing on your wound, the pain you feel as a result of it, the separation you feel as a result of it. Most therapy is about talking, about the wound. You go in, you spend an hour talking about it, and then you wonder why it hangs on you for a week in between sessions, because nobody did anything to take you out of that vibration. They're perfectly happy to leave you in that vibration. Modern therapy is catching on to where coaching has been for a long time, which is that, no, it's not about, we don't need to understand the wound and everything about it. We don't need to immerse ourselves in it. It's good to get a basic understanding of it. It's good to go into shadow, understand what's about to play out for you, how you could trip over your dick. It's good, but it's not where you should be focused, because as your focus creates your reality. So if you're focused on, how you're going to mess things up, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to mess things up. You just want to understand what's playing out for you. And then you want to be firmly in the end result of what you want to experience. What is my destination? What experience do I choose to have here? And so, yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, shadow work ends up taking the focus away from what I think is really important, which is choosing to have the experience you want to experience. I don't think it's a waste of time by any stretch of imagination. Anybody who works with me, we do a certain amount of delving into the core beliefs and into the shadow. But once people understand what that means for them, what shadow is, how it plays out and all that, I leave that largely behind, because it is at that point intended to be your history. I don't want it repeating. I don't want it to be part of your present. It's your history.
Right. Like it served its purpose to bring the awareness to that. Now we choose to shift our focus on what is it that we want. Exactly. And that's the predominant focus then moving forward, is where are we going? Let's make it happen. Leave back there, leave the kind of the sleeping dog lie, so to speak.
Well, yeah, if we know where we want to go and we start tripping up on the way, we already know where to look, because we already understand our shadow enough to know ourselves well enough. This is a question of know yourself. Know yourself well enough to know how you're going to trip yourself up. And when you see yourself doing it, choose better. But but know yourself can become an obsession. It can become navel gazing. It can become paralyzing. And for most people, it actually is. Most people spend so much time trying to figure out why they're wounded, how to heal their wound. Oh my God, heal your wound. You're never going to heal your wound. You're never going to heal your wound. You're wounded. Accept it. It's what makes you unique. It's what makes you who you are. Just don't be in the dysfunction of your wound, because on the functional side of your wound is every gift you bring to humanity. Right? So stay the fuck out of shadow. Like, that's not where the meat is. That's not where the gold is. The gold is in the functional side of your wound. The functional side, what you can bring to humanity, how you can serve. And that, when you're in that energy, that to me is leadership. In any capacity, whether you're doing it in your living room with your family, whether you're doing it in a meeting, in the boardroom, whether you're doing it standing in line at the grocery.
It's too bad you're not too passionate about that, Mark. Could be a little bit more. That's great.
I'll try and ramp it
up. All right.
Hey, let me go ahead and just open up this can right here. Yeah, it is what it is. When we're discussing the wounds that we are facing, of course we all have them. I personally feel if if we're meant to have the same experiences, we wouldn't have been made different. Our genetic makeup, our image, our appearance, how people see us. Um, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to wounds and the history of wounds in one's personal life, some of it's centered around generational trauma, right? Past wounds that um, we're forced to deal with when it comes to, let's say, my grandparents, my great grandparents never healed from their traumas that they had, so they pass it on to their children. My parents not only had to deal with their personal trauma, their wounds, but they carried the burdens of their grandparents and their and so on and so forth. We're looking back at generations of wounds and personal traumas. How can we work through that? If I think I'm just having a hard time because where I am accepting or that withdrawing that principle into me. Um,
Okay. Well, I mean, look, Jonathan,
I
as
mean,
I said at the beginning of this, my message isn't for everybody. My message is for people that, are not, that don't believe that those things have to be healed in order to be whole. As far as I'm concerned, you're a whole human being. You're totally complete. There's nothing broken about you. I mean, we're all broken, and that's great, but because that's what makes us individuals. But and we're not all here to have the same experience. If we were, if we're not individuals, we're all going to have the same experience. But that's why we look different. That's why we think differently. That's why we have different wounds. So we can all have different experiences. I think of it as, God put us here to have as many experiences as we can have, gave us permission to experience things however we choose to interpret them, and then said, go at it. And most people are out there creating shit experiences for God to experience because they're focused on their incomplete nature, their wound, their history. And that's fine. That's by all means, God wants those experiences too and says yes to those. But why, if you can provide God with a better experience, wouldn't you? There's so many people providing God with shit experiences. Why wouldn't you provide God with something better to experience? I'm experiencing a much better life than I had 15 years ago. Much, much better, and the more that I embrace the fact that that in service to God, the more that I'm enjoying my life, the more I'm granted, the more I'm creating. I'm not focused on healing my wound. I'm focused on creating love, on creating joy, on creating experiences for other people. I'm focused on serving humanity. And that's that. Like, I can't do both. I can't focus on my history and focus on serving humanity at the same time. One's a godly pursuit and one's an identity pursuit. And the reality is that everybody's wounded and everybody has historical and generational wounding. I came from a family where, I was physically abused by my father. My father had an explosive temper, post-traumatic stress disorder from World War II, triggered by loud noises, and lived in a house with 5 children. I got hit a lot, and he got hit a lot, and his father got hit a lot. But at some point, it has to fucking stop. At some point, the focus on the pain of the past has to stop, because you can't be a fool will lose tomorrow looking back at yesterday. My favorite quote from Burt Bacharach, Dionne Warwick. A fool will lose tomorrow looking back on yesterday. You cannot be in both spaces at the same time. You're either going forward or you're healing the wounds of the past. If something from your past gets in the way of you moving forward, that's when you deal with it. But dealing with all of it is completely unnecessary. At some point, the child abuser just stops abusing, or the family continues to experience abuse. And it's not what program he went through. My father didn't have to go, he did go through a program. He found out that he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder when I was 17. He went into therapy and he came out and never hit another human being again. I had 20 solid years with my father where he proved to me that a person can change. A person can give up their history. A person can, he didn't go back and heal his wounds. Trust me, my father was not one to go back and even look at his wounds. He didn't heal his wounds. He said, that doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve my family. He had a desire to serve the people he loved. He created that transformation from love and from knowing where he wanted to be with his family, not in healing the wounds of his past.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, just a quick follow-up to that. Thank you for that. That was really inspiring. I guess when you're working with your clients, I guess, or the folks you work with, getting them from that space. I mean, it seems like a space from coming from a space of working from their shadow and their wounds, getting to the space of love, or what you call godliness. That transition, I mean, from what I hear, it's kind of like Tara Brach says, like it's a radical acceptance of what is, and then you got to kind of push this forward. You have the choice, essentially. You have the choice to create that life that you want to see in front of you. What are some tools to be able to sustain that choice as you move into the world and it continually kind of knocks down what your intentions are? How do you keep that energy up moving forward?
Okay. It's a fair question. I don't think I have the time to answer it in its entirety, but I'll give it a shot. If you go to my website, you'll see it's a little dated. I don't necessarily work in these terms, but I put it there because it helps people to understand. The first word you'll see when how do I do this is triage. Because most people coming in need a certain amount of triage because they are heavily wounded and heavily steeped in their wounds. So there's a period of time where we actually do look at that, kind of flesh it out a bit, figure out which core beliefs are playing out, which agreements you've made, what stories you're telling yourself, inner dialogue, that type of thing, stalking stories. And then eventually, though, once we have a solid understanding of that and a basic understanding of what your particular flavor of dysfunction is, we move into, the next step. And really, for me, that's moving into the creative structure. So creative structure is simple. I'm here, I want to be here, and I take steps to get there. Yeah. And so rather than focusing on healing the wound and all of that, I say, what do you want to experience in your life? And we work on creating experiences, everything from like, what do you want to create in this moment? What do you want to experience in this moment? All the way up to like, what's your destiny? Why did you come here? What do you want this planet to do? And that's where the focus goes from that point. As far as I'm concerned, if you're always focused on where you want to be and you're willing to take the steps to get there, then the things that you need to know will become obvious. How your dysfunction is playing out will become obvious. How, what you need to do today, the steps you need to do today will become obvious. The problem with humans is we need to know, we need to know how. We have this obsessive need for orientation. And orientation is the strongest need that we have. It's even stronger than our need to survive. People who can't get orientated properly in the world, like there were a lot of people who lost their orientation around COVID and committed suicide. When people can't get oriented, think about the stock market crash in the early 1920s, when people were throwing themselves out of buildings because they couldn't get oriented, they couldn't wrap their head around what their future was going to be. When we don't know how it's going to be, we go a little bit mental, right? So that need to know how has us constantly looking for steps to take that aren't necessary, and also has us engaging with that inner dialogue that doesn't serve us. inner dialogue, we're going to say how in our head, and then the inner dialogue is going to answer, I don't know, you don't know, you can't do this, you're not fucking capable of doing this, right? And so, you know, it's why we don't ask how. The creative structure, right? You know, tension seeks resolution. Where is my, do I have it? I don't. I usually have my big rubber band here to do tension. I do have my big rubber band here to do tension seeks resolution. Tension seeks resolution, right? There's tension in this, and it automatically wants to resolve itself. Yeah. So if I'm over here, and I stay out of it, the tension, I'm here, and I want to be here. Just that tension of not being where I want to be will resolve itself if I stay the fuck out of it. But I can't stay out of it because my inner dialogue keeps pulling me back into thoughts that don't serve me, pulling me back into behaviors that make me do more work than I need to do, pulling me back into my dysfunction. And so that little tension seeks resolution gets interrupted by your obsessive need to know, your obsessive need to be able to get orientated. How, what, where, why? What's playing out for me? Why is it playing out for me? It becomes an obsession, takes your focus off of where you're trying to go. If you always know what your destination is, and you're absolutely committed to taking the steps to get there, you can't not do it. Understand this, your ego, your identity, your wound is designed to get you to quit. That's what it's designed to do.
To stay safe.
Is to stay safe. Common in every human being's dysfunctional pattern. In every human being's dysfunctional pattern, we share one thing. At the end of our dysfunctional pattern, we quit and we don't get what we want. At the end of our dysfunctional pattern, if we don't end up sober, it's because we quit, not because we were in the wrong program. At the end of our dysfunctional pattern, if we don't get the relationship that we want to experience in life, it's because we quit. It's because we let our inner dialogue get the better of us. We let our wound become more important and take more of the focus and take that focus off of what we want to experience in the first place. Right?
Does that answer your question, Adam?
That gives me a lot of thinking to do. I appreciate that, Mark. Thank you.
Absolutely.
What answer, Adam, is, you know, keep out of your inner dialogue. You know, clean up your inner dialogue, because here's the thing. I can guarantee you, when you engage with your inner dialogue, do you give equal time to everything that's working in your life?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
So you're not even working with an accurate view of where you actually are located. So this is your location. This is the thing you want to experience, your destination. If you don't know what your destination is, it's pretty hard to hit a target if you don't know where it is. But even if you know where your target is, you know, if you don't have an accurate view of where you're starting from, if your GPS is not giving your current location accurately, you're going to have a fucking hard time getting to where you want to go, right? And why is our GPS off? Because we never give it an accurate view of its reality. We only allow it to see, the inner dialogue only allows for what isn't working. But I guarantee you, if you look at everything that isn't working in your life, 99% of that is made up. If you look at everything that is working in your life, 99% of all that is truth, unassailable truth. Why are you ignoring the truth while you're trying to figure out where you are in the world? Why are we so busy in the shadow that we're not looking in the light? Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you feel
Absolutely.
about how do you feel about the term meeting someone where they are? You spoke a little bit about different vibrations, you know, higher vibrations with people operating on lower vibrations when it comes to leadership, and maybe the process that you use to help people, you know, how does that fit?
Yeah, that's a great question because I have a bunch of coaches that that I work in collaboration with that have been that have gone through my trainings. I have coach trainee program right now in thing, and and one of the things we talk about is meeting a client at their vibration. Um, the bottom line is that every vibration, every client is going to have a vibration. And as I said, if those people are in seeking mode, we may not be the vibration that they resonate with. But when somebody comes to us, it's because they've pretty much gotten through the website and still decided to pursue it, which means that they're serious. Again, the website's designed to get you to quit. If you quit, you don't get what you want, or you go get what you want somewhere else. So once people get through, we know that they're kind of in the vibration that where they'll be served by the way we think. But we also recognize that people are coming in at various levels of proficiency, various levels of understanding, and also various levels of identifying with their wound. And so it's very simple. We don't teach compassion, and we don't teach empathy, because empathy is the thing where you come down to somebody's vibration. So if somebody's in their wound, or somebody's angry, somebody's sad and they're crying in front of you, you're up here, you're in your coaching mode, and somebody bursts into tears and starts telling you their sob story and their wound. If you start to empathize, you come down to that vibration. We don't work in empathy. We work in compassion. So how do I come down? How do I meet somebody at their vibration? I have compassion for them. I say, I can imagine how difficult that is for you. Not like I've been there, I get it. Even if I have been there, and even if I do get it, doesn't matter. If I empathize, I have joined them in their vibration. If I'm holding the vibration, of serving them powerfully, then whatever has to happen in order to serve them is going to happen. And I will be guided as to where to meet them. So again, I think the big difference in this conversation is I expect that every human being is powerful. And I don't feel like I have to do anything special. I expect that they're powerful. I also expect that if they want to transform, they're going to have to do some work. So I can be compassionate, but I don't need to empathize with them. I can hold that space from up here, but I can appreciate, that they're not there yet, without judgment, and without condescending. I can still hold a higher vibration and hold the space for them to come up to it. And I can appreciate that they're not there yet. But that's as far as I go, as far as meeting somebody where they are. If somebody comes in and they want to sit there and wail for an hour about how miserable their lives are, that's not me. That I'm not going to come down to that vibration, and I'm not going to want to, and that person isn't going to want to work with me anyway.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So we got a few minutes, and as true fashion of this conversation, it's taken some different turns, and it's been wonderful. I think for me, what I'm really collecting out of it and where it's gone is the idea of personal leadership, and taking responsibility for my inner work and what's going on for me, so that I can really keep myself in check as I want to be a leader with myself first and foremost, but then in the world. And I think a lot of this, and that we didn't have a script today, and I think it went to some really powerful places. And to wrap this up and to bring it home, I would just like to invite any of my co-hosts to share something, or Marc, or anybody, we got a few minutes left here just to wrap this up in a way. If you got something burning or anything for you. I do not. I really have just enjoyed this journey and listening. So I think, for me, I'm pretty much, this has just been wonderful. It's a lot to think about, a lot to absorb, to process, and I'm really grateful. Didn't know if Adam or Jonathan, if you guys have anything you want to add or connect about.
I kind of hear an echo from our conversation last month, actually. Spoke
Yeah.
a little bit about Richard Rohr, and he's like talked a little bit about engaging the world with yes instead of no, right? And that's sort of like a similar, analogy to what Marc is talking about. Essentially, like if you're coming from your wound, you're like, no, I need to protect myself, I need safety. But if you engage the world with yes, you're open-hearted and you're engaging the world with love, and at that point, you're connected and you're integrated with the rest of your higher self and with the world. And so, like that theme is starting to resonate very strongly with me, and I need to continue to work with that. So thank you for that, Marc.
Yeah. So, just in addition to just to add on to your last question, really, as far as that, true service, right? While you're trying to, while you're in the process of figuring out all the things you want to experience in life, while you're in the process of figuring out who you want to be in relationship to your wound and everything else, the one thing I can say is, one of the highest vibrations that there is, in the love vibration category, and I don't mean romantic love, which is conditional, I mean the state of being, which is love, which is godliness. One of the easiest ones for humans to access without any trouble whatsoever is service. Choose to serve in every situation. If your destination is to serve the people around you, you can't really fuck it up, right? So choose to serve. You want to stay out of your wound, you want to stay in the right vibration, you want to set the vibration for other people. What better vibration to have people come up to than service? Yeah. So choose to serve the people in your lives, choose to serve your communities, choose to serve your families, and choose to serve yourselves, not from ego, but from, the experiences that will actually enrich your life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have my notes. I mean, I have my notes that I've taken from this. I do feel as if I've gotten exactly what I needed to hear from you, Marc, and I do appreciate your candid approach and honesty of who you are. Thank you for all of this, man. I appreciate it for real. Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, it looks like we've reached that time. So thank you so much, Marc. Thanks for your time this morning. It's just so grateful for you and for showing up in all your color and all of it. It's just been, yeah, I think I'm vibrating much higher as a result. So I thank you on behalf of the Mankind Project. I thank you. And so Creative Self Mastery, your website is Creative Self Mastery. That's correct?
Selfmastery.com, screwthewound.com. just so you know, yeah, there's that one too. And marcdifrancia.com. You can find us on Facebook. The coaches and I, we do a conversation on Facebook every couple of weeks called Being the Pace Car, setting leadership vibration, every couple of weeks publicly. And then we've got a group that we meet with, an inner circle that we meet with every week as well. So check us out. Look for us on Facebook. Look for us on the web. And if you've heard something that you enjoyed today, then come and explore the conversation a little deeper.
Beautiful. Thanks for collaborating with us today.
Thanks for inviting me. I had a great time.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. All right. Thanks for joining us today. You guys take care today. Go out there and shift your perspective.